Alright, Treasury Financial Manual, Volume 2, Part 4, Chapter 5000. Letter of Credit, Federal Reserve Bank System Operation Requirement. This chapter prescribes the operating procedure forms format follow the Federal Reserve Bank branches for letter of credit operations of Section 1515, Authority Title 12, Standards Code. The 139 authorized Secretary of Treasury of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank branch of the Depository Official Agent of the United States. Section 5020, Letter of Credit, Federal Reserve Bank System. Function for the system summarized as follows. The Federal Program Agency will obtain the minimum manual signature for the recipient organization official for the authorized to sign payment vouchers drawn on the letter of credit. The Federal Program Agency will assemble the certified letter of credit with the signature cover of the cash management regulation compliance staff. The staff shall transmit letter credit over the signature card of the appropriate Federal Reserve Bank after signature certifying off the Federal Program Agency the information letter credit of the signature card are verified responsibility of the amount authorized validity legal effect of the signatures entered for the letter of credit signature card rests entirely on the certifying off of the Federal Program's agency not the Federal Reserve Bank. As funded need with the recipient organization submit with the properly payment of the voucher for the payment financial institution for the transmission appropriate to the Federal Reserve Bank payment of voucher for the generally considered the non-cash item with our credit for the account of the financial institution which have access to the Federal Reserve Bank. Federal Reserve Bank will view the payment of voucher if the payment of the proper payment credit account with the financial institution share of the account with the treasurer will the amount with the voucher. Alright, Section 5025, definition, checks paid technique that defers to the special technique of the payment where the financial institution or a Federal Reserve Bank authorized to draw the letter of credit on behalf of the recipient organization. 502520, Federal Program Agency determine further to the federal government authorized payment of the recipient organization. 502530, financial institution, the term refers to the financial organization have a direct or indirect access to the Federal Reserve System. Federal Reserve Services having demand deposit actions. 502540, letter of credit, the terms being commitment certified by the authorized certifying officer of the Federal Program Agency specified with the dollar limit available designated recipient organization. 502550, letter of credit, Federal Reserve Banking System. This is identified with the system wherever the letter of credits are maintained and served by the Federal Reserve Banks acting with the United States Treasury. Section 5025, recipient organization, the term refers to the organization outside of the federal government receiving the payments of federal funds. Section 5030, forms the following items listed as illustrated in appendix number 1 is for the chapter either the letter of credit Federal Reserve Banking System. Form number title 1193, letter of credit. 1194, authorized title signature cover the payment voucher letter of credit. TSF forms 1207, statement of inactive letter. 12 letter of credit. 1214, rejectment payment of voucher of the letter of credit. 5401, payment of voucher of the letter of credit. 5851, treasury letter of credit transmittal. 5858 way of memorandum regarding status of the letter of credit audit verifications. In standard form letter of credit, this will be the Federal Program Agency issue letter of credit armed with the letter of credit Federal Reserve Banking System. 1194, authorized signature payment of voucher for the letter of credit. This form will be used with the designated signature for the recipient organization office official authorized signature letter of credit payment vouchers. Form 1207, the statement of inactive letter of credit. This form will be used to report status inactive letter of credit of the Federal Reserve Banking branches bank system. Form 1214, reporting payment of vouchers, letters, and credit. This form will be used by the Federal Reserve Banks to explain on the reason for rejecting payment of vouchers. Form 5401, payment of voucher and the letter of credit. This form will be used by the recipient organization withdraw funds for the letter of credit. Form 5851, Treasury letter of credit transmittal. The form will be used by the Bureau of Government Financial Operations. Transmit the standard form 1193 and 1194 and any other letter of credit information of the Federal Reserve Banking System. Form 58582, way of memorandum regarding status of the letter of credit audit verification. This form will be used to certify the letter of credit balance, have them verify the correct. Further will be used with the Federal Reserve Banks to report exemption balances. 503080, special forms upon approval of the cash management regulation compliance staff. Federal Program Agency may use special forms to issue letter of credit. When processing these forms, Federal Reserve Banks shall apply with the same operational requirement standard form 1193. Alright, 5035, establishing a letter of credit, recipient of a letter of credit, cash management for the regulation compliance staff with the TS form 5851 form, forward letter of credit documents used to recipient of the form 5851, Federal Reserve Bank shall verify the signature of the cash management regulation compliance staff, the representative of the paying transmittal against the signature of the individuals again authorized to sign the form 5851, identified correspondence signed with the Commissioner of the Bureau of Government Financial Office or an appropriate designated the Federal Reserve Bank will notify the change of the authorization occur with the office if the unauthorized signature appears on the transmittal unsigned, the Federal Reserve Bank must contact the cash management regulation compliance staff before processing any document. They verify the signature of the Federal Reserve Bank shall ensure if the type of informed on the transmittal agreement, the letter of the credit of the document attached. The cash management regulation compliance staff will examine the letter of credit document, the completeness, the accuracy of the prior to the transmitted document. In the event extraneous missing errors, NAV of the cash management regulation compliance staff must be notified before any further action. If everything is in order, duplicate copy of the transmittal should be signed, date, and returned no later than the next business day. And you have cash management regulation compliance administration tab, Bureau of Government Financial Operations, Department of Treasury, Treasury Annex number 1B809, Washington D.C. 2022 6. 503520, recipient of letter credit information by wire. Cash management regulation compliance staff will wire letter credit information circumstance warrant. Federal Reserve banks will accept the wired information received from the cash management regulation compliance staff. Federal Reserve Bank and its own discretion may use the callback procedure to verify the wired information received with the cash management regulation compliance staff. Occasionally, with the cash management regulation compliance staff will telecopy signature card with the Federal Reserve Bank may have means available to receive such information. Ordinarily, standard Form 1193 and 1194 will be made with mailed to the cash management regulation compliance staff no later than the next business day under the Form 5851. Alright, 503530, with the examination of the letter of the credit documents, Federal Reserve Bank shall examine the completeness each initial of the letter, credit, signature card, receive the cash management regulation compliance staff. At the minimum, the Federal Reserve Bank shall issue for the correct Federal Reserve Bank indicated in Form 1193, 1194, name of the recipient organization 1193, agree with the corresponding with 1194, letter of credit for the standard of the number 1193, agree with 1194, amount authorized indicating 1193, and period available to fund with the check, block is checked with 1194, indicating the number of signature required withdrawal of the letter of credit. Term Form 1193 and 1194 sign. 503540 amendments to letter of credit. Amendments to letter of the credit transmitted appropriate to the Federal Reserve Bank cash management regulation compliance staff. Federal Reserve Bank must review all the amendments, receive the completeness, verify that the letter of credit is currently on file. Correct Federal Reserve Bank has indicated the amendment the number to clearly identify the numbers consecutive order. Time designation fund recipient organization information financial institution information agree with the standard Form 1193 amendment to change with the information footnote with the period with the 1193 describing the information change. If there is a change amount authorized prior authorization plus or minus change equals amount authorized amendment standard Form 1193. Amounts authorized. Federal Reserve Bank responsible for establishing and maintaining ledger of the letters of the credit, including establishing periodic authorization. Federal Reserve Bank should be post amount with the authorized no later than the effective date. If the effective date of the weekend holiday, the amount with authorized should be posted no later than the next business day. Let a creditor receive the effective date posted immediately upon receipt. Immediate amendment. If an amendment is decreased the amount of the authorized below the available bands, cash management regulation compliance staff should be contacted by telephone immediately for letters with the periodic authorization on balance shall be revoked at the end of the period indicated with the full amount of reestablished beginning with the new period. The entries must be paid posted with the letter of credit subsidiary ledger either on the first business day with the new period with the business day of the first voucher of the presented for payment. Section 5036, 503560, replacement signature federal program agency will furnish the cash management regulation compliance staff with the replacement signature card. Wherever there is a change of the person authorized to sign the paper, the voucher of the letter of credit, the Bureau of Government Financial Operations must transmit signature card, verify the signature of the certifying officer of the federal program agency. Replacement signature cards will effect the date of the Federal Reserve Bank. 5040 payment vouchers of letter of credit. 504010 presentation Federal Reserve Bank. Federal Reserve Bank is set with the cutoff time present for the form 5401. Which is when the late date of the possible no later than 2 p.m. local time of the Federal Reserve Bank with the recipient organization, financial institution, original duplicate, triplicate copy of the form F5401, quadruplicate copy of the may be retained with the drawer of the original copy may receive it in order the voucher to be processed. If either duplicate, triplicate copies are missing, the Federal Reserve Bank will photocopy the original form 5401, substitute the photocopies missing, copy of the process of the voucher. Usually payment voucher may be accepted. Financial institution which does not maintain an account with the Federal Reserve Bank, credit with the financial institution which does not maintain an account with the Federal Reserve Bank. Payment of vouchers received with the financial institution which does not maintain an account with the Federal Reserve Bank should identify on any company document financial institution which will review credit. Alright, 50-40-20, payment of voucher limitation. Foremost, the letter of credit with the payment vouchers will not be drawn frequently with the daily. However, there is an agreement with the cash management regulation complying with staff of the Federal Reserve Bank system. Multiple vouchers will be profitable. Certain letters of credit. Additional vouchers received the same day with the same letter of the credit should be profitable regardless of the day withdrawn. With the absence of the agreement, is additional vouchers received same day, same letter of credit should be also profitable. Withdrawn date for different withdrawn dates of the same. If the cash management regulation complying with staff shall be the contract for the payment of vouchers shall be the withdrawal with amounts of $5 million or less. State with the letter of credit of the Federal Reserve Bank should telephone the Bureau of Government Financing Operations regarding the disposition of the voucher. This amount is more than $5 million. The authorization to pay such amount is noted in Standard 1193, precluding the rejection payment of the voucher withdrawn under the letter of the credit. Checks paid technique. Vouchers drawn in amounts less than $5,000 should be profitable to have with the requested drawdowns less than $5,000 with the same letter of credit should be brought to the attention of cash management regulation compliance staff. In the event of cash management regulation compliance staff, the code for the case for whether the times difference preclude any Federal Reserve Bank contacting staff with the payment voucher question should be held with the United until the next business day. Our 50-40-30 examination of the 5401 Federal Reserve Bank should diligently examine the payment vouchers depending on the letter of credit. Form 5401 should be examined to complete and verify the letter of credit, the agency, the location code, federal and financial institution, identify the same as shown with the related letter of credit that the amount requested is not altered and with the remaining balance of the letter of credit. Federal Reserve Bank shall determine that the Form 5401 signed with the individual signatures appear with currently effective 1194. However, the Federal Reserve Bank is not held accountable to forge unauthorized entry for the 5401. Forged unauthorized signatures appear with the currently effective 1194. Federal Reserve Banks are not responsible for the subsequent number of the voucher drawn with the letter of credit the voucher received with the voucher number. The out of sequence should be not rejected. Federal Reserve Bank should not review the amount of federal funds on hand. This is information supplied with the recipient organization, federal program agency only. Alright, 50-40-40, payment of the Form 5401 proper payment with the fact with the debit of the account with the crediting the account with the financial entry with the payment posted the letter of the credit subsidiary ledger charged amount with the authorized according with the day of the pay with the day of the voucher withdrawn with the original triplicate copy of the voucher should be legible with the day of the day paid, either signed and stamped in with the four Federal Reserve Bank use only block. The date paid will signify the date of the treasury account was debited with the financial institution account and credit. 50-40-50 distribution of the form of 5401. 5401 distributed as follows. Original pay with the form 5401 must support with the form on the daily form 17 transcript of the general account United States Treasury. Each form 5401 document will show with a separate entry for the specially prepared letters and a letter of credit summary amount with the limited listing and report of the Treasury. 17M of abstract charges submitted to Government Bureau or Government Reports Branch Bureau, Government Financial Operations Department, Treasury Annex Number 1, Government Accounting Office, Building 1415, Washington, D.C., 2022. 6. Duplicate copies of the 5401 should be retained with the Federal Reserve Bank. Triplicate copies of the 5401 should be mailed to class and same-day payment accomplished. Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff Administrative Services, Bureau of Government Financial Operations Department, Treasury Annex Number 1, P. Box, Washington, D.C., 2022-26. Federal Reserve Banks require with the cash management regulation compliance writing with the event with no payment of the voucher paid with the given the day with the written notification should be made and same the draft with the triplicate copy of the 3F and Form 5401. We'll cut the tape there for a second. Alright, 50-40-60 criteria for the projection. Cash management, the regulation, complying with the staff of the Federal Reserve Bank, reject with the payment of the voucher for the following review the median with the notified the financial institute for the rejection, fine with the answer of the decision to reject with the form 5401, reserved from the judgment of the Federal Reserve Bank with the dollar amount exceed available the bank with the dollar amount has been altered with the signature for the form 5401. It does not appear with the bank ends with the type of name signature for the 1194 number of the signature required does not conform to the requirements identified in 1194 signature for the 5401 is not original has been erased the past over the current erected fluid small signature for the not acceptable. Signature 5401 does not compare favorably with the signature of 1194. Letters of credit agency location name of the recipient organization name of the financial institution differs from the information on 1193. Dollar amount exceeds $5 million and the Federal Reserve Bank does not have the authorization paid amount so for the excess of $5 million. 504070 with the distribution rejected the 5401. The rejected voucher for the past posted with the letter of the credit subsidiary of the letter of Federal Reserve Bank should send all copies of the 5401 cash management regulation compliance staff with the 501214 explain with the reason of the rejection. Rejected form 5401 company with the form 1214 should be mailed no later than the next business day with the same address with triplicated copies of the 5401 Federal Reserve Bank should with no further liability with respect to unpaid voucher. 504080 holding payment voucher. Federal Reserve Bank may hold the voucher if they advise with the cash management regulation compliance staff of the amendment. The replacement signature card for the transit will be avoid with the projection of the voucher. Simplified with the letters of credit period authorization. Federal Reserve Bank may receive the payment voucher the last day of the period in which for the insufficient funds remaining. Since the amount of the authorized reestablish some such vouchers may be held for the first business day of the new period. Or 504090 checks paid the technique upon the telephone checks paid allocation payment of the letter credit with the accomplished Federal Reserve Bank completely signing the processing form 5401 by based on telephone and telegraphic similar form of electronic telecommunication received the recipient organization financial institution method of facilities payment letter of credit financial institution located outside Federal Reserve City and able to present payment vouchers for the same day credit. 5498 notification each letter with the establishment of the telephonic method of the payment with the cash management regulation compliant with notify with the appropriate Federal Reserve before proceeding implementation. 504090B an implementation cash management report regulation compliance staff will provide with the Federal Reserve Bank for the following information related with the credit operating with the telephonic method: name, address, recipient organization, name, address, financial institution, name, telephone number of the authorized person of the financial institution, level of the credit, proposed date, implementation. Federal Reserve Bank shall contact the financial institution, make the necessary arrangement to facilitate implementation cash management regulation compliance staff of the form 1193, 1194 to the Federal Reserve Bank, and initial supply with the forms 5401 reordering of the instructions will be sent directly to the Federal Reserve Bank Federal Programming Office Agency. Federal Reserve Bank shall be able to adequate control to proceed with the storing blank 5401 forms 5401 not interchangeable since the Federal Program Agency assigned different agency location codes that are on form 1194 will be used to ensure that officials have the authority to make telephonic drawdown with the signature file with the Federal Reserve Bank prior to the effective date of the implementation. Cash management regulation compliance staff will verify the telephone Federal Reserve Bank has received with the 1193 1194 supply 5401 subsidiary ledger cards should be established and noted with the legend payment by the telephonic methods only. Preclude any change of the duplicate payment that has been made with the presentation of the form 5401 normal change handles. Alright, completing Form 5401, the Federal Reserve Bank will expect to use care with the diligence, completing with a paid voucher for the base of the telephone, telegraph, similar electronic telecommunication will have no liability except for negligence. Federal Reserve Bank will complete with the Form 5401 based on the instruction received with the financial institution. Minimum instruction will include the letter of credit done with the voucher number, the agency, location, amount, name and address, recipient organization, name and address, financial institution, adequate code word called back, other similar procedure for the arrange, verify the past messages received the financial institution such that the procedure should confirm some security standard with similar method to transfer funds. Federal Reserve Bank will complete the Treasury Form 5401 ensuring the correct agency location intended and the payment voucher on copy the voucher's name of the person financial institution shall authorize drawdown shall be printed with the area reserved the authorized signature upon proper completion voucher and legibly dated with the date paid with either signed stamp block reserved Federal Reserve Bank use. Distribution of the original triplicate copy of the same shown as 50 Treasury Financial Manual Volume 2 Part 5 504050 for quadruplicate copy should be sent to Financial Institute Records. Alright, 5045 improper payment. The Federal Reserve will have no liability for the payment of the voucher withdrawn with the letters of credit except its own negligence. Federal Reserve Bank require the cash management regulation complying with staff the immediately event with the improper payment with the major type of the improper letter of credit with the payment is following. Payment except available to payments overpayment. The payment of the voucher bearing signature that does not appear with the currently effective standard form 1193 unauthorized payment. Or 5045 10 overpayment to 5545 10A overpayment to detect the same day, but Form 5401 should be custody of the Federal Reserve Bank. In the case of the Federal Reserve Bank, responsibility to collect with original copies of the 5401, notify the financial institution payment rejection, make necessary adjustments for the Federal Reserve Bank records, letter of the customary subsidiary ledger. 5401 would then be rejected with normal procedures. Alright, 504510B, the overpayment detected form 5401 has been paid with the copy distributed following the guidelines apply. The Federal Reserve Bank shall contact the financial institution to determine if its fund has been withdrawn from the recipient organization. If the fund has not been withdrawn by the recipient organization, financial institution should be requested to return the funds at least amount equal to the amount overpayment of the Federal Reserve Bank. If the financial institution will return the fund to the Federal Reserve Bank, the cash management regulation compliance staff should be contacted to assist the handling with the return of the fund. Federal Reserve Bank, after receipt of the funds, the financial institution identified with the information cash management regulation compliance staff standard form 215, deposit take a profit deposit, Federal Program Agency number, normal manner, standard form 5215 will completed if the current agency located code for the deposit should be obtained with the cash management regulation compliance staff. The agency location code appears on the letter credit should not be used. Amount of the voucher should be posted on the letter credit subsidiary ledger. However, it is important not to revise entry of the made of the subsidiary ledger return funds of the Federal Reserve Bank. Depository copy of the standard form 215 will pertain to the Federal Reserve Bank. Federal Reserve Bank should be made with the confirmed memorandum agency standard form 215 cash management regulation compliance staff. Or 504010C, with the Federal Reserve Bank cannot recover the funds. Cash management regulation compliance staff will notify the request of the Federal Program Agency to recover the funds for the recipient organization. 504510D, the Federal Program Agency is unable to recover the funds recipient organization until the additional fund Federal Reserve Bank and negligent performing the obligations to the regard of the amount of the overpayment will be charged with the Federal Reserve Bank and recipient organization until the Federal Program Agency willing amend the letter of credit. Cash management regulation compliance staff provide the Federal Reserve Bank with the documented cover of the overpayment. Alright, 504525, unauthorized payment is detected with the Treasury Form 5401 that has been paid with the copy distributed by the cash management regulation compliance staff shall be contacted with the cash management regulation compliance staff shall attempt for the approval, obtain approval of the appropriate federal program agency if the child wasn't valid despite the incorrect signature of the payment was fraudulent federal program and unable to recover the funds of the Federal Reserve Bank with negligent performing the obligation regardless of the amount of the payment will charge over the Federal Reserve Bank. 504530, other improper payment, the Federal Reserve Bank must contact the Federal Cash Management Regulation Compliance staff with immediately instruction the guidance for the other payment with which the Federal Reserve Bank feels the error is improper. Or Section 5050, inactive letters credit. Letter of credit considered inactive if they have no activity included change of the amount authorized from 1 year or more. The Federal Reserve Bank will review the active file on the annual basis each September 30th to report all active and inactive letters of credit. Cash Management Regulation Compliance staff separate records for the such agency allocation code should be submitted to the Cash Management Regulation Compliance staff. After communicating the respective Federal Program Agency for the Cash Management Regulation Compliance staff with the Treasury Form 1207 advised the Federal Reserve Bank deposition of the letter of credit. Alright, 5055-6, revocation of the letter of credit. The balance of the letter of credit has been withdrawn from the Federal Program Agency. No longer intended to use the letter of credit. The financing or precipitant organization, Federal Program Agency request the cash management regulation compliance staff to revoke the letter of credit. Federal Program Agency request the revocation will be sent through the cash management regulation compliance staff to the appropriate Federal Reserve Bank. I ordinarily instruct the recovers of the letter of credit would appear on the forms 58, 51. Information of the cash management regulation compliance staff will sometimes specify effective the day of the revocation, and if no effective date appear with the Federal Reserve Bank shall revoke the letter of credit upon receipt of the letter of credit. Transmittal payment vouchers required received prior to the specified revocation date show process payment voucher received at the same date transmittal letter or later, regardless for the date drawn, should not be processed. Cash management regulation compliance staff will occasionally revoke letters of credit by wire, ordinary confirmation, telegraphic instruction included as part of the form 5851 transmitted by cash management regulation compliance staff. Alright, Section 5060 of the retention letter of credit document, letter of credit documents retained according to the following time frames. 1193 includes the initial 1193 amendment, the initial letter of credit with the special form that are used in place with 1193 should retain with the forms of the minimum of 3 years the day of revocation. 1194 deemed revoked with replacement. 1194 received the active letter of credit with the letter of credit is revoked. In both cases, 1194 should be retained the minimum of 3 years day of revocation. 5401 file is not Federal Reserve Bank is not required to retain copy of the 5401 copy of the 5401 or letter of credit subsidiary ledger should be retained for a minimum of 3 years of the date paid. All other letter of creditors, Federal Reserve Bank should retain all other documents received with the cash management regulation compliance staff of the 5851 minimum 18 months of the date of the correspondence. 5065 letter of credit audit verification, Federal Reserve Bank equipped with the cash management regulation compliance staff with verification undisturbed letter of the credit balance of the books. Federal Reserve Bank agreed with the balance of the book. Federal Program Agency for Verification requests generally initiated the Self-Audit of the Department of the Federal Reserve Bank. Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff selections as liaison between the Federal Reserve Bank Federal Program Agency. Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff does not require Federal Reserve Bank verified balance. Federal Reserve Bank verified balance encouraged sampling techniques not performed 100% verification. 5065 submitting request cash management regulation compliance staff. The Federal Reserve Bank should cover the letter with the verification request cash management regulation compliance staff with the request will list the letterhead, letter of credit numbers for the corresponding balance for the specified audit date. The request should be submitted with a duplicate separate request to each agency location code. Processing request 506420. Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff of the value of the Federal Reserve in writing the recipient verification request the program agency respond with the agency return the Federal Reserve Bank. Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff of the exemption balance report. Federal Reserve Bank should verify the letter of the credit subsidiary ledger for any errors in the amount posted. Alright, completion of the Cash Man 506530 Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff with the industry with the same of the Federal Reserve Bank form 5858 when complete verification request has been returned. Federal Reserve Bank upon reserve receiving 5858 required to indicate the status of the audit with retained duplicate copy of the signed return of the original Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff of the audit with the consent of the compliant complete and no difference exists between Federal Program Agency and Federal Reserve Bank balances. Alright, 506540, the difference in the balance, addition of the original copy of the 5858 Federal Reserve Bank required for the submit of the Cash Management Regulation compliant with the second verification request, same audit date for all letters of credit where the difference report the Federal Program Agency could not be reconciled with the request should be submitted with the duplicate with the only letters of credit for the balance for which need of the verified. Separate request is required for each of the agency location code. The copies of the letters should be attached for the letter of credit should include the entries for back inception of the letter of credit with the date balance with verified with the Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff. For the second request the ledger sheet with the Federal Program Agency for the review. Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff with the form 5858 note for the Federal Reserve Bank agency findings. Alright, 5070 disclosure information. Federal Reserve Bank should contact only financial institution cash management regulation compliance staff regarding letter of credit matters. Discretion required with respect to the information disclosed of the financial institution. For example, information remaining available to balance or the individual authorized certified payment of the voucher should not be disclosed with the cash management regulation compliance staff. Discourage direct communication from the Federal Reserve Bank and recipient organization, Federal Program Agency, recipient organization with the inquiry should require the Federal Program Agency show them the letter of credit necessary for the Cash Management Regulation Compliance. Inquiries required for the Federal Program Agency shall refer to the Cash Management Regulation Compliance. 5075 Compliance. Federal Reserve Bank expected to perform letter of credit operations under the provision. Cash Management Regulation Compliance should be credited with the writing for the Federal Reserve Bank unable to comply with the provision. Federal Reserve Bank encourages to develop, maintain separate interoperable procedures incorporating provisions of the chapter for the use of personal letter and credit. And for Section 5095 inquiries of the Cash Management Regulation Compliance Staff Bureau of Government Official Operations, the Department of Treasury Annex Number 1, PB, Washington, D.C., 2022-6, telephone number 202-634-5569, and then appendix, when that was Chapter 5000, Part 4, Letter of Credit, Federal Reserve Bank System Operation, Volume 2.